The third battle that we will mention is the Battle of Andalus. The Battle of Andalus that took place under the famous commander Tariq ibn Ziyad on the 28th of Ramadan in the year 93 Hijra, corresponding to July of 711. And a few weeks ago, we gave detailed classes on Andalus. And 2 weeks ago, I myself was also in Andalus, and we visited some of these very sites. Tariq ibn Ziyad was a young general, 19 years old, and he landed on the Jabal Tariq, Gibraltar, with barely a few thousand men. And he laid out the land, and he sent for helps from Musa ibn Nusayd. And Musa ibn Nusayd, the governor, sent him a few thousand. At max, he had 12,000 men. And Tariq ibn Ziyad faced the king of Spain, the king of the Visigoths, by the name of King Roderick of the Visigoths of Spain, a tyrannical ruler who had a massive army. Some Muslim books say up to 100,000, non-Muslim books say 40,000. Whatever the case, 12,000 from the Muslims, 40 to 100,000 on the other side. And Tariq ibn Ziyad's forces are landing from the ocean. And the forces of the Franks and the Visigoths are on home turf. They're rested. They're the ones with the military equipment. And in a decisive battle, or I should say series of battles, that lasted 8 days from the 20th of Ramadan to the 28th of Ramadan. In 8 days, the Muslim forces continuously bombarded King Roderick's settlements outside of the land that is now Qurtuba, Cordova. And eventually, the Muslims won a resounding victory, so that they celebrated Eid in that year as the victory over the Visigothic kingdom. And this victory opened the door for the conquest of half of Europe. As we all know, the Muslims reached 100 miles outside of Paris. Literally, in the year 756, the Muslims conquered all the way up. They conquered they conquered all of Spain, other than a small strip in the top. They conquered half of France, and they made their way outside of the gates of Paris. And this is in the year 756. Then they were beaten back, and they had Andalusia, southern Spain, for 750 years until the fall of Granada in 1492. But the decisive battle that opened the way for European Islam, for Islam to flourish in a land of Europeans, where the people were Europeans and the language was Arabic, even though the civilization was European, was the land of Andalus. And its decisive victory took place once again in the final days of the month of Ramadan in the year 93 Hijra. Barely a year later, we get to our fourth battle. Barely a year later, and those were the good old days. Those were the glory days. One battle being fought here, the other battle being fought there, one conquest after another. In the year 94 Hijra, another decisive battle takes place in the final days of the month of Ramadan. Once again, the month of Ramadan, but it is on the other side of the world, not on the European side. This is the battle that took place under Mohammed ibn Qasim from the tribe of Thaqif in Ta'if. And it is taking place in the province of Sindh, in the land of India. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf had sent Mohammed ibn Qasim to battle one of the kings that had hijacked Muslim ships, and he had molested the women on the ship, and he had done things to the Muslims. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf sent a small army under the leadership of a relative of his, and that is Mohammed ibn Qasim. And Mohammed ibn Qasim, another young man in his 20s, Mohammed ibn Qasim came with barely a few thousand troops and Indian cavalry and Indian swords and Indian horsemen were feared throughout the medieval world. And in my seerah classes, I mentioned even Indian swords are mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ as being of the best swords of the time. Indian warriors were feared at that time and place. Muhammad ibn Qasim came with barely a few thousand men, and he fought the king, the Raja, he was called Raja Dahir of a land, a province which is now in modern Sindh. And he faced Raja Dahir. And the Raja had, of course, typical Indian style. He had thousands of troops, hundreds of elephants. And the Muslims had not faced elephants in India, but through tactics, through power of Allah Azza wa Jal, through the qudra and blessings of Allah, Muhammad ibn Qasim fought a decisive battle in Ramadan of 94 Hijrah. And he destroyed the troops of Raja Dahir, King Dahir, and he killed King Dahir. And this opened up and paved the way for the establishment of a small principality of Muslims in what is currently Sindh, outside of Karachi, to the modern country of Pakistan. A small if you like, sultanate began from the Muslims, from the time of the Sahaba. And this was the land of Multan, and the land of Makran, and the land of Sindh. And there was a dynasty, where I talked about this in my previous classes, the Habadid dynasty, that flourished there, Muslim kings, that flourished in Muslim, if you like, India, for hundreds of years, until other Islamic civilizations came, Mahmud al-Ghaznavi and others. But this Islamic civilization began in the time of the Sahaba. And what opened the doors was the decisive battle that took place in Ramadan of the year 94 Hijra. And that place where the Muslims established their land, where the Muslims established a sultanate, that place has remained a Muslim land up until modernity. And the modern nation state of Pakistan, of course, it includes this territory that goes back to that very time. And Pakistanis pride themselves, and inshallah this is a halal pride, that Pakistan is the only nation state in modernity that was founded with the name of Islam and for the explicit purpose of protecting Muslims. And we can take pride in the fact that during the time of the Sahaba, Mohammed ibn Qasim opened up a land that is currently sitting inside the domains of Pakistan. It is literally 100 miles outside of Karachi, and the remnants of the cities that were established, the remnants of Multan and Makran, which were, by the way, magnificent civilizations. The architecture, they had so many technological advancements that the other Indians were marveling at. The remnants of those civilizations to this day exist. All of this began in the month of Ramadan in 94 Hijrah.